Okay, show us some things. You said you wanted to lope some circles and show some things about him that, you know, our viewers can see and take away from that. So
Okay.
go ahead and show that to
Okay.
us.
What I'm going to show you here is when I lope circles, I'm going to show you how, what I call, he's dramatic in the face. When I ask this colt to break at the pole and get soft, he'll do it, but he'll also kind of duck his head for me to relieve pressure. When he's had enough, he'll let me know. The key to this I can live with his head moving up and down, because I tell you what, I can always get this colt laterally. There's no complaints on this colt's side about having lateral bend. I tell you one thing that I'd really want to point out, and I think it's a key that's missed in barrel horse training. Vertical, if you cannot get your horse to flex vertically, that is the stiffness. Everybody thinks lateral, lateral, lateral. As long as I have lateral, I have my horse. True, you do to some degree, but you also need to elevate your rib cage and get this horse vertical. Vertical is very, very important. Whoa.
Now I'm a little bit not geometry wise.
Right.
Tell me, explain vertical and lateral.
Right. Lateral is side to side. Vertical is up and down.
Okay, so you're saying his head needs to be, you're okay with a little bit of height on his head.
Right.
As long as he'll pick that shoulder up.
As long as he yields to pressure.
Okay.
Any kind of pressure I want to do, I'm giving him a cue. I want a response. Everything we do has rhyme and reason. We need a response.
And I noticed that you're not picking your hands up and going over the mane. Now,
Right.
Paul Humphrey in our last video, he talked about that a lot.
Right.
Explain why you do that, because that's a new thing for running barrels. Not
Right.
a lot of people do that. Explain why you do that.
I don't understand the question.
Well, see, you're not going across his neck.
Right.
You're going up and
Right.
bringing him up like this.
Right.
And so he
Got
talked
it.
about that sort of thing.
Right.
And there's a difference there.
Yes, yes. That's
okay,
a good,
now
that's an
question
excellent point.
I got to ask the question again, right?
Yeah, what you might ask her is,
Okay.
She didn't understand the question.
Okay, here's one thing. She was a little loud going around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't need to talk. I
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you because
You're
I'm.
out of breath trying to holler at her.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't need to hear. I don't need to hear you just talk normal like we're
Okay.
talking. You have to really bring your tone down because we're so used to yelling across the
Oh, okay.
arena
Mm-hmm.
that I have to point that out.
Okay.
Every time with every. Don't worry, you're not the only one. I do it. I go, hey.
I know, but I talk loud anyhow.
a while ago, Kendall, is why are you picking up like this instead of picking?
Okay, Kendall. I noticed when you were riding this horse around, and this is a new thing for me as a barrel racer and trainer, as well as other people, and Paul Humphrey talked about it in his video a little bit, about picking a horse up like this instead of going across their neck. And I want you to kind of talk about that too, because when I went home and tried it, it actually worked for me, and I even use that now more.
Right.
So explain why you use it and what kind of benefits you get
First
from it.
off, I love that question because it pertains to body control. I'm not, when I pick up my horse and move him, I'm wanting him to move off that rein. And you know, to be honest with you, we don't make that move in barrel racing. We do if we're in a bind. That's our, you know, that's when we're having a problem. What we want is flexion and to elevate the rib cage. It's body control, keeping that horse round in the circle, round in the rib cage, driving from the inside hock. I always try and keep this colt on his inside hock because I'm going to help him.
Right.
But
so
as
more
far
or
as
less, it's kind of, it's keeping them down and keeping them turning, keeping their body together and in control.
right,
Rather than trying to move over, which you don't want to do that, but we're teaching them to do that. So
Right.
I think that that's an excellent point.
Right.
Because I think that's a lot of things that people miss. I know I certainly have for however many years.
right. Well, you got to think about it too. Is if I can run from point A to point B and stay in a straight line, but still have my horse in position to turn, I'm going to outrun somebody.
Absolutely.
It's faster.
Absolutely.
And it
Fastest
all-
point between two lines is a straight line.
Exactly, and it all boils down to body control.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about, you're going to go around the barrels.
Okay, yep.
Show a little bit about your training.
Right, right.
So let's get started on that.
Sounds good.
Okay, Kendall, when we were talking earlier, you told me about this 3-part stop that you use. So tell me a little bit about it. Show us the benefits you have using it.
Right. I think the majority of horses that come into my place, they do not have a fancy stop. They don't have an efficient stop. And when a horse can't stop, they can be dangerous. They can be injury to horse or rider. So I like to break it down into 3 steps. A stop isn't run in there and slam on the brakes. A stop has got to be taught. And if you teach a horse to run in there and slam on the brakes, eventually they're not going to stop.
Right.
So let's get started with that.
Okay.
The 3-part stop to me consists of obviously 3 steps. I raise my bridle reins, I sit down in my saddle, and then I'll ask my horse to stop if he hasn't by then. What I've done is I've asked him twice to slow down, and then the 3rd time I'll tell him. Raise my bridle rein, stop, sit down, and tell him. This is a great thing to teach as you're teaching rate to a horse. That way you won't have to rely on pulling on him or setting your horse. I think the days of going in there and per se checking your horse are done. Our sport's too competitive for that. We can gain body control nowadays because we're more educated with speed. We will not have to check. Okay, I'm gonna raise my bridle reins, sit down. Whoa, and ask him to stop. Probably what I do is so subtle, I don't know that you can see it, but he can feel it. Raise my bridle reins. Whoa. Sit down.
Now explain to me how you teach that. Break it down how you teach it to a horse, because they're going to want to know how they get their horse teaching. Do you start at a walk?
Definitely. Start at a walk.
So show us at a walk.
Start at a walk, but I want to tell you something, even before we get to the 3-part stop. We start a horse by getting them soft in the face. You know, breaking that down.